Good day, YouTube. I'm Daniel Claremont. I'm the Acadian therapist. Welcome back to lovely rural Nova Scotia. I hope you're doing well. A common thing I will hear from clients after a few sessions, sometimes the very first session, and sometimes it's something I hear in my own head, is, why do I keep putting this off? This video is the third in a series on behavior change. I'm calling it Roadmap to Change. There's a playlist. You can find all the episodes on my channel. We've talked about different productivity systems. We've talked about emotions. We've talked about common barriers. We've talked about tiny steps you can take, and there's always a little thing that you can practice right here and now. And most of you haven't done it. And I'm not coming at you because I'm the same way. A number of times I will take in a podcast or I'll read a book and it makes it sound super simple, super easy. I know it would improve my life right here and now if I just got started, and I don't do it. Why is that? Well, that's what we're going to talk about this week. Procrastination. What is stopping you from actually moving forward? We're going to trade a few ideas on it and maybe give you something that's going to help you kick into that next stage. As always, if you find value in this content, please feel free to like, share, comment, subscribe. All those things help support my work here. Let's go. A common message that I reinforce with clients is brains like to keep doing what they're used to doing. So if you're used to smoking, well, the body and the mind likes to continue smoking and likes to continue using cigarettes to cope with stress and whatever else. It's attached to a lot of things, so the brain's going to want to keep doing it. If, let's say, you want to start going to the gym and you're not used to going to the gym, your brain is very used to not going to the gym. And so you're going to naturally forget because you're not used to that. This is why when I talked in the Tiny Habits video, the importance of prompts, little reminders. That's why I will often talk with clients about putting a little post-it on the wall, something that helps remind you to, oh right, I need to do that thing. Obviously, the Kanban system we talked about last week is all about those post-its and those reminders. Not to shame, not to guilt, but to actually help you think of something you're not used to thinking about. But we're going to talk a little bit more about when you do remember to do the thing, and we all remember, and we say, oh yeah, I was supposed to do that. And almost instantly there's a feeling, or a bit of a, oh, I know I should probably do it. There's a bit of a stink on it. Now, the reason for that is this is a new habit, something that you're looking to change. It's going to involve you changing a little piece of yourself about your life. Maybe you're going to have to give up something that you like about yourself. So that procrastination triggers this little bit of pain. Brains respond very well to pain. We respond more to punishment than we do reward, generally speaking. You can have 20 great days, but when you have one bad day, you remember it. Someone gives you the stink eye in Walmart and you remember that. We say, what's their deal? What's their business? Or maybe it triggers anxiety responses. So it pushes you out of your window of tolerance that we've talked about a lot before. It triggers those survival reactions. And so it teaches you to avoid that thing. Whenever you think about the new behavior and you go, ugh, I don't want to. Well, that's what's getting reinforced. You're reinforcing, avoiding, or that it's a pain, or that you're not going to like it. And so you don't do it. Now, of course, that can't go on forever, and when we procrastinate on doing things, the tension builds up, and so a bit of fear builds up about not doing the thing. So let's say putting off an assignment that you have to finish, putting off replying to emails, putting off paying your taxes, whatever it is. There's this build up until you say, oh, okay. And there's this adrenaline surge. There's this feeling of just power through it. And so you're very productive for a short amount of time. It's quite remarkable. People that will say, I'm not on top of things, I'm always putting things off, and yet they always get things done. but they get them done at the last minute. They're relying on that surge that comes from putting it off, and there's this adrenaline surge, this surge and flurry in activity, and you get it done. And then at the end of it, we punish ourselves again. So sometimes we might get a little thrill, we get a little bit of an accomplishment, but mostly we're going to say, oh, thank God that's over with. I don't want to think about it anymore. And so we reset the clock and it builds up again. There's a lot of businesses and organizations, there's some management styles that are really rooted in this fear-based system. We're going to talk a little bit about that in a later episode. But this constantly on edge, this avoiding trouble instead of reinforcing success and achievement that so often leads to burnout and a lot of dissatisfaction in their work. I want to talk a little bit more about that surge of productivity that is associated with the fear of getting in trouble or that buildup of procrastination, because obviously it is productive. Most of us are used to that kind of dynamic of put off and, oh crap, there's too much to do. And so maybe we can make use of it. There are, just a quick Google search will bring up a lot of interesting articles about the connection between anxiety and excitement and the thrill. And so this is where you can set deadlines, you can plan short-term projects. I talked a bit about that again last week with Kanban. If you make a short-term project, I call it a moonshot project. You come up with something really ambitious, a short timeline, you pour all your energy into it, and you get it done. And you celebrate that. Now the celebration is key. So there you're celebrating your achievement. There's not, man, I was stupid for putting it off. No, you set a task, you achieve it, and then you're good. And that's super healthy. So if you can make use of that tension that comes from building up a bit of anxiety about putting things off, and you just, all right, I'm just going to power through it. I'm going to make a bit of an adventure out of it. It's very important to note, though, there is a huge, vast difference between anxiety and excitement. In fact, maybe as soon as I mention that there's an overlap, some folks who have had the experience of anxiety instantly switched off this video. Because if you've experienced acute anxiety or a panic attack, it's kind of like comparing a tsunami to a ripple in a pond. In theory, they're kind of the same thing, but very different consequences. Now, this is because when we feel emotions, that lived experience is what is true. That's what is dominant. What we feel is true is always stronger than what we know to be true. So when we're flooded with that anxiety, it fills up the whole space and everything feels terrible. So we have to proceed with caution with this kind of a principle. Now, I would say this difference between feeling and knowing is a big reason why therapy lasts as long as it does, or why we suffer as long as we do. We can talk about interventions, and yes, if I had a nickel for every time clients said to me, Daniel, I know what I should do, or I heard you in my head and I couldn't wrap my head around it, or I couldn't get myself to do it. And this is one reason why some therapists are pretty militant about the idea of do the homework. I tend to be a lot more compassionate than that, because it makes sense that you're not going to do it, because it doesn't feel real to you. Practices like mindfulness, like the dropping anchor exercise or taking a few breaths, the grounding strategies videos that I presented a while back, these things do work. The more you practice them, brains get good at what they practice, so it does help you bring back in your window of tolerance over time. And at one point you get it. You really do. You understand the principle, but you experience the anxiety rose and then it dropped. Or I took a few breaths and I looked at it differently. Or I was able to notice when anxiety sparked up here and it wasn't as strong as usual. Now that stuff is rocket fuel. when you start realizing that you do have some ability to ride these waves and that the waves are not always the same, then there's hope. And that's where we're able to practice, we're able to move forward. So we can say, just practice more mindfulness and grounding, but you already know that. I'm a big fan of the point and name technique. So any time that you watch one of my videos or anything that someone tells you that, says, this could make the quality of your life different, you say, yeah, but I don't want to do it. Instead of feeling stupid for not doing it, look that person in the eye, look the video in the eye, say, yes, it makes sense. It would probably make my life better. It would take me no effort or very little money, and I'm not going to do it. You point at it and you say, no, I choose not to do it. And then don't do it. It's a retreat, but you know that you're doing it and you know why. It's too much for me right now. I choose not to take that on, even though I know it would probably make life better. Instead of cultivating shame, you cultivate a choice, and there's control in that. But what I would suggest is revisit it afterwards. Instead of saying it's not going to work for me, you can say it's probably not going to work for me, but I'm going to consider it. I'm going to keep considering it. This is what I see happening in therapy sessions all the time. People will come back again and again. We have some similar conversations because they're very similar interventions. But over time, people are more ready to assimilate the idea that they can change, that change might be a good idea, or the frustration of staying where they're at builds up to the point that they need to do something, or their relationships are starting to splinter. Circumstances change, the interventions stay the same. And again, I'm going to push for small changes. Small changes done steadily over time really do move mountains. That is what becomes, I think, the most effective at lasting changes. You can have those moonshot tasks that are fueled by that adrenaline we talked about. It by all means enjoy them. That's great. There's an adventure, there's a thrill. I promise I do the same. But also, when you can use a system like Kanban or whatever, little reminders, something that you can practice a little bit every day, you're cultivating a promise to yourself, a promise that you really want to build this life. And every day, you're renewing that promise. So I hope that gives you a few things to think about when it comes to procrastination. I will look forward to seeing you again next Sunday. In the meantime, you take care. I wish you well. See you again soon.